Hello everybody and welcome to Decoding the WSL, the podcast dedicated to the stats and facts in the WSL. Today we'll be previewing Arsenal and Man United in the upcoming WSL season. We'll be looking at how they got on last season, what's changed over the summer, and how we think they'll fare this season. I'm Sam Biccarino.
I'm Connor Roberts.
And I'm Laura Howard.
Yes, hello and welcome to Decoding the WSL. Here we are, and I've got two guests on the pod for the first time. I've got Connor Roberts with me. Connor, how are you doing?
Yes, all good. It's been a busy summer. There's lots of ins, quite a few outs as well to talk about. So I'm excited to be on here.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a few opinions, I assume, on the Man United section of this podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
And also with me today, I've got Laura Howard. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, happy to be on and looking forward to discussing the season. It's coming fast, and I'm very excited for the WSL to be back underway.
Yeah, I think we all are. As we're recording, it's a month today until the first match of the season, just to give you an idea of when we're recording this. So if there are any transfers, etc., after it, that is why we've not picked up on it. It is the 20th of August at the moment. But yeah, as I said in the preview there, we are doing preview of the WSL season for both Arsenal and Manchester United in this episode. So we're going to have a look at, for each team, one at a time, how did they get on last year? What's changed over the summer? Who's been transferred in and out? Have there been any injuries? We'll take some of your questions and we'll speak about how we think the next season will go. So I know Connor's going to be chomping at the bit to go for Manchester United, but I'm going to leave him sort of in suspense for now. And we're going to start with Arsenal. Last season, they finished third in the WSL. They qualified for the Champions League again, which was, as an Arsenal fan myself, always nice to see. But they were a bit behind both Chelsea and Man City, 5 points behind in the end, as well as 9 points ahead of Liverpool in fourth. So they were sort of set in that little third place on their own. They were largely let down by their finishing. I thought, looking at their stats, their XG was really good. They made a lot of good chances, but their finishing was just really poor. And I think that was where they struggled last season. Laura, where do you think Arsenal can really improve in the next season compared to what happened last season?
Yeah, I feel like we lost the title against the teams that you'd expect us to win, or we lost out in the race because we had that defeat to West Ham. We had the defeat Spurs, which arguably a better opposition last season and did a lot better. And then also the opening day defeat to Liverpool. And I think it was there where our performances weren't at the standard you'd kind of expect. I think there was obviously the loss to Chelsea, which was super disappointing because of the nature of the performance, but you kind of take a win and a loss potentially against the eventual champions. But considering we definitely had a squad with the capability of beating a squad like West Ham, with the ability of beating Tottenham or Liverpool, even though both those teams did superbly last season, I think when you look at those games and you look at the fact we were only 5 points away, it felt like we were quite adrift because we were never really getting back in that race. But I think we were struggling against those potentially weaker teams, which I think is becoming less and less in the WSL, and I think that will be tougher coming this season. So I think you need to get used to playing against teams, and we struggled against low blocks in particular. That's somewhere that we can improve in how we break that down. I think we've seen that, and we'll come on to it, but in some of our signings, likes of Caldente, they feel very targeted at being able to break down those low blocks that we came undone against, like the likes of West Ham last season. And it's just kind of maintaining that momentum and getting the job done, which I think was the difference between City and Chelsea last season and us.
Yeah, I think you're so right. With teams we dominated were the ones actually that ended up being the sticking points. At that game against Spurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, I think Arsenal were far the better team. Obviously, Martha Thomas scored the only goal of the game, but Arsenal had more than enough to score at least a couple, but just wasn't to be. And yeah, like you say, those low blocks. But fingers crossed, the signings that have come in will counteract that. So if we start off with that, let's have a look at some of the squad changes. Let's go for the kind of negatives first. Those that have gone out of the squad this year. Let's start with the big one. Viv Miedema is obviously the main player to have left Arsenal this year. She's the one where rumours were coming out of the press and that. She's had 7 years at Arsenal and has gone out on a free to Man City. Connor, as a United fan, I'm quite interested in this. Would you prefer Miedema stayed at Arsenal or is now at City?
I don't know whether I'd prefer either, to be honest. I prefer at United, if I'm being totally honest, but that was completely unrealistic. I'm surprised, to be honest. I was surprised when I found out, and I'm still intrigued to see where she fits into that City team. Obviously, with Bunny Shaw up top as well, it's going to be intriguing to see how she fits in there. I think, speaking to a lot of Arsenal fans, I think obviously now it's probably a case of moved on. I think when we get to the first game of the season, though, that might be a little bit different when she's back at the Emirates straight away. So it's an interesting one. I didn't think she would leave the WSL, so that obviously rules out a lot of other clubs, and City is the only really other place she would go to. I would never see her really at Chelsea and United. I don't think it was ever going to be an option either. So I'm still a little bit surprised. I think Arsenal probably suited her better, is probably fair to say, obviously with familiar, I guess, surroundings and so on. But she's gone to a new club and another new challenge for her. But she's that good of a player. I think she can fit in pretty much anywhere she goes. So I don't think there's going to be an issue of settling in or anything there.
Yeah, I can imagine she will hit the ground running because she's just got so much quality to her game. It is going to be weird seeing how she fits in because obviously Man City have already got probably 5-6 players in that sort of front four that are top quality. And while you'd expect Miedemar to either potentially hold that number 10 role, if not the number 9 role, instead of Bunny Shaw, yeah, I don't know if she's going to be starting. You know, does she put Jill Ward on the bench? Does Mary Fowler or Chloe Kelly drop out? Those kind of questions. I can't see Bunny Shaw dropping out. My favourite stat for Viv Miedemar is one that in the WSL, she scored 79 goals for Arsenal. And while she was on the pitch, Arsenal conceded 63. So she scored 16 goals more than the opposition had on her own. But yeah, Viv Miedemar is obviously the main player that's out this year. There's been another couple of departures, major ones anyway. There's Sabrina D'Angelo, who's gone to Villa. Swap deal with Daphne van Domselaar, kind of. But we'll get to that in a moment. And Sarah Bahadi has gone out on a free with 19-year-old Naomi Williams coming through the ranks and being the new third-choice keeper. There is also Amanda Elisabeth, who has announced that she's pregnant, which is great news. She played 17 times last year. She obviously did very well for Sweden at the World Cup last summer. So she'll be sorely missed. Yeah, obviously we can give her all the best for that. Something that I think will be really important for Arsenal, not important necessarily, but a real dagger to the heart as such, is Victoria Pelova. She had an ACL injury in June on international duty. And personally, I don't know about you two, so whichever one of you two has an opinion on her, please shout out. But for me, I think she's someone that was really underrated in the team last year. She was really important. She was one of the top 10 in the league for assists, expected assists, goal creating actions and passes in the penalty area, which I think are just things that Arsenal need, especially with those unpicking low blocks like you spoke about earlier, Laura.
Yeah, I think she'll be a real miss for Arsenal next season, and especially at the start as it's starting to gel, because I think she was definitely a standout player. You look at her, you look at Lotte Wubben-Moy last season, and they're probably the two top shouts for Arsenal player of the season, I'd say. And I think when she hit a stride, she really added something to the team, like you said, in terms of being able to create chances that we've kind of spoken about. We were creating chances and just not scoring them, but I do feel like she really added a kind of, I think at points last season we felt quite one-dimensional in putting crosses in from the wing into the box, and that felt like our only option. And even if they were creating chances, I felt like we weren't scoring them because teams learnt how to defend that, and we didn't feel like we had other options at times. Whereas I felt like when Pelova came in and like hit that form, got that runner form, starting more games, she was the kind of player that was creating those chances that were coming in from midfield and driving, was kind of a driving force into creating different opportunities into the box. So she'll certainly be a big miss. And I guess the interesting thing will be who steps up, and like, will it be Cooney Cross that can come in, or will we see Kafaji Mornham potentially, who had a great season the year before, take up that kind of role? And obviously Valti and Little are great, but yeah, it does definitely feel like a really big miss. And given she'd hit such a kind of run of form, really, really disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still rumours going around. They've certainly quietened down a lot, but I've seen in the last 2 or 3 days people mentioning Kira Walsh's name again. Personally, I don't think that's a transfer that's going to happen. I feel like there's so much talk about it. We'd be hearing more if it might, but I think she would be a fantastic missing piece. But like you say, we've got a few players back. Let's go on to that. So we've got a few players back from injury this year. There is Leah Williamson. I know she played a bit towards the end of last year, but she's got a full pre-season ahead of her now. Laura Wiemoiter is back after her ACL injury. Leah Volti is back after her knee injury. She hasn't played since March. Catherine Kuhl is back from Everton. Idabau has said that they are planning on keeping her at the club this year. They don't want to loan her back out. And Lena Hurtig announced that she was back in training after being out with some personal issues. After the players coming back, we've also got new transfers in, which are the exciting bits. So I'm going to start with one that I mentioned a moment ago. Sabrina D'Angelo has gone out to Villa. and in has come Daphne van Domselaar. I think they were announced on the same day, or was it a day apart? It was initially reported that there was a £200,000 release clause, although Emma Sanders reported that that was not met and it was actually close to £100,000. But it's still quite a lot for a goalkeeper, especially when Zinsberger is already at the club. Connor, do you think Van Domselaar or Zinsberger should be Arsenal's number one keeper?
I mean, it'll be Van Domselaar because I don't think you pay, or I know you're talking about kind of a swap type arrangement. It feels very, very similar to the Gabby George and Alicia Ahern thing United did last summer, to be honest. It's almost like we'll take one of your better players and give you something in return just so we can get this deal done. That's kind of what it feels like here. So I think Van Domselaar will be the number one. I think Manu gets a bit of unfair criticism, I can't lie. I think she gets blamed for a lot. I saw it a lot last season. It's almost like every time Arsenal conceded, it was Manu's fault, regardless of, there's about 20 phases of play that have happened before it actually gets anywhere nearer. So I don't think she's the best keeper. I'm not just going to sit here and say that she is, but I do think she's a better keeper than she gets credit for. So I think it's good to have that bit of competition between them both. I would expect Van Domselaar to take that. But it's an interesting one. Was only at Villa for a year and already made that jump up to a side that really, it sounds weird to say the pressure's on Arsenal. I'm kind of looking at it from the outside. I look at Arsenal and United very similar in respect to the fan bases are a little bit restless with the manager. There's a bit of pressure on the team to really make a title charge. That they're kind of similar in the way that they are in terms of new signings coming in and bedding in. So it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. But I definitely think it's an upgrade on the keeper situation. And yeah, as you said, young goalkeeper as well. It's building for the future as well as the now.
Another transfer that came in a week or two ago now was Mariona Caldente from Barcelona. I think this could potentially be one of the signings of the season, not just for Arsenal, but for the WSL. She's spent the last 10 years at Barcelona. She got 19 goals and assists in Liga F last year, and she has had 24 goals and 68 appearances for Spain, which is really good. She's also good friends with Legadina, which hopefully should help her settle in. I know she's just caught up today as we record with the Arsenal squad in America. Certainly seems like she's going to be a fantastic signing, don't you think, Laura?
Yeah, I'm so excited about this one. I think she brings that experience that we won the league back in 18-19, and we do have obviously some of that squad remaining, but I think Caldente brings that Champions League winner, routine Liga F winner, and that experience is something to speak about in itself. And then you get a quality player alongside that who is so exciting to watch. Just watching Spain at the Olympics, I was kind of just watching for Caldente, and it was just like, it made me so excited to watch a player like that week in, week out is exciting in itself. And then to think what she can add to our team. We've spoken about that kind of ability to break down low blocks and kind of interplay in those tight spaces around the area was superb when I was watching her at the Olympics, and you've kind of seen that for Barcelona. Hopefully we qualify for the Champions League and she can use that experience there, because I think having high quality players always pays off there, and having that Champions League experience, it beds in superbly. And I just hope she hits the ground running. I think it's probably been made a little bit tougher because she's joined a bit later. She's had the Olympics. She needs to be kind of rested, and that needs to be done well. But if she can get in and get into the flow quickly, I think she could be a phenomenal player for us.
Yeah, my hope is that there's a month to go. I would hope that she's going to be treated right and actually get to the point where it's the start of the season. You've got that first game, obviously, against Man City, and she's filling that hole that Viv Miedemar's left, I think, as a really elite player. Obviously, there is another major signing that's come in, someone that personally I thought was fantastic in her debut, or sort of, friendly debut against Washington Spirit a few days ago, which is Rosa Kafaji. She was BK Hacken's top scorer last season with 15, and obviously helped Hacken reach the quarterfinals in the Champions League. Like you've mentioned, Laura, that Champions League experience is something that is going to really help Arsenal. Arsenal went out probably too early last season, to be honest. It was a disappointing Champions League campaign. To have two people that have got to the knockout stage, something of such importance that you can't underestimate. As well as those coming in, we've also got a few youngsters coming through. I know Eidevall has said he's looking for loan moves, but you may see some more minutes for people like Katie Reid, Naomi Williams, Vivian Leah, Michelle Aubameyang, Fred Godfrey, those sort of players. We do have, before I get on to our predictions of the season, we do have a couple of questions from the wonderful people on social media. Connor, I'm going to throw the first one at you, which is from Yannick on Instagram. So, who at Arsenal do you think will have the highest goals and assists this year? Looking at Caldente, Rosso, and Stina Blackstenius.
Oof, that's a question. I was going to say Mead, and then you gave the parameters of just those three.
I think Yannick gave them.
I think... Do you know what? I will say Russo, actually. I think the form she's hit at the back end of last season carried it through. I think, yeah, I'll say Russo. If you're combining goals and assists, I don't think she's going to be the top scorer, but I think if you're putting them both together in terms of goals and assists, I think she'll probably top that.
Who do you think is going to be top scorer?
Bethany. But yeah, I think it will be me. I think... do I? But yeah, but between those two, I would expect... I mean, what did Russo hit last season? Was she just shy of double digits, or did she get to double digits?
Oh, no, she was double digits in the league last year.
Didn't get it, so I don't know what Mead finished on, but I remember her hitting, kind of some goals on her comeback as well, and she's doing that off the back of a comeback. So I think she will be right in the mix. I don't know with Caldente, I really don't. I know a lot of people are really hyping this signing up as a really good one. I genuinely don't know how she's going to fit in at Arsenal, if I'm being totally honest. So that's why I would go for Russo at the moment.
Yeah, I think the way Caldente fits in the squad is going to be key to how Arsenal do this year. I'm actually going to agree with you, though. I think Russo, especially out of those three, and probably out of all of Arsenal players, to be honest, I think will have that highest goal and assist combination. I genuinely think she's all-round play is really good. Her build-up play is good. She looks sharp in the friendly the other day. Sort of, taking around the keeper and her awareness, those sort of things that need match sharpness, she seems to already be there. Laura, who do you think out of those three, Caldente, Rosso, and Blackstenius, will have the most goals and assists this year?
Yeah, I'm going to be boring and say the same. I think Russo, when I saw this question, I think straight away, I think she'll do it on goals. I think that'll potentially be the kind of main source from her goals and assists. Hopefully beat last season. How she looks in the pre-season friendly, she felt like the one that was sharpest out of everyone, and the two goals that she scored were both lovely. The first one was very improvised, and I think that in a striker, we saw that. I feel like that was kind of the peak Russo that you saw at Euro 2022 with the back heel against Sweden, that I was very kind of dismissive of at the time because she played for United, and now I'm very all for that. And I think it was very improvised again here, where she kind of brought it down in one movement, brought it down and flicked it into that. That was lovely. And I think being able to score those goals, and the goal that she scored for the second goal against Spirit, which was just a striker's goal, taking it around the keeper almost and finishing from having plenty of time to kind of think about that shot. The more and more we see her develop into that poacher striker, as well as all the other facets she has to her game, hopefully the more and more goals we'll see from her.
I think most people that look at Arsenal this year will probably say the same, that Russo will be the one out of those three. I think Stina comes away for me because I don't think she's going to get that much pitch time. Always seems to be a bit of a sticking point for her at Arsenal. And then Caldente is just a bit of an unknown quantity at the moment. We have another question on Arsenal I wanted to ask you guys. So this is from Charlie on X. Laura, I'm going to ask you this first. Charlie says, thought Kvaji looked really bright in the friendly the other night and linked up with Russo nicely. Do you see this being the starting 9 and 10 pairing? How do other players fit in, like Stina Blackstenius?
Yeah, I think this is super interesting. I kind of saw this question and wrote a little preferred lineup for Arsenal next season. I think if we're playing the 4-2-3-1/4-3-3 as we did last season, I think Kvaji Russo would be my ideal pairing. And I think the way we saw them, it's a friendly and you can't take too much from it. And I'm very against kind of taking too much from friendlies because it was also not the best match to watch anyway. But the way we saw Kvaji and Russo link up in that game, and what I saw from Kvaji, which is all I've kind of really seen from her. So I don't have like loads to go on, but the way they linked up, the Kvaji assist for the Russo goal was lovely. It was like a one-touch little flick in behind. So if that partnership can flourish, absolutely love to see that next season. The Stina and Russo thing really puzzles me because I feel like if Stina didn't have a guarantee of minutes, she wouldn't be sticking around because I think she'll want the minutes. So I'm really interested to see how that's managed, whether there's kind of rotational options to move Russo back into the 10 and use Stina as the 9. It didn't massively work, but it was used a little bit last season, and maybe we'll see that come into play a little bit more this season. Whether there'll be kind of decisions to be able to tactically mix it up and play them both up front, I'm not sure. We've not really seen that, so I kind of doubt it, but it will be really interesting to see how Blackstenius is used in that, or whether it's just, the aim is to have Champions League football, WSL football, and challenge in the cups, and ultimately they'll both be able to get some minutes as number 9 because of the volume of fixtures. But yeah, I think that will be another kind of interesting storyline from Arsenal that pans out of how Stina is used.
Yeah, I think Arsenal are going to be trying to fight on all 4 fronts. So they're going to need the squad depth. Rousseau is not going to be able to play 90% of the games, maybe not even 80% of the games, just out of workloads more than anything else. Connor, what about you? How do you see Arsenal's sort of 9 and 10 pairing being this year?
It's an interesting one. I think it just gives you options, to be honest. I think it's more of a case of that than people trying to look at it from a problematic point of view, trying to fit everybody in. I think I've always said, obviously, from watching Russo for years at United and prior to that as well, that I still don't think, and I've just said Russo's going to be the top scorer out of the 3 players that we just had a second ago, I still don't think Russo is a proper clinical number 9. I think she's better at bringing others into the game. She's probably one of the best at that, holding the ball up and bringing others in. I think if you're after goals, I think Russo probably needs 4 chances and to score 1, whereas Rosa potentially only needs 3 or 2 to score. So if you're going for a proper scoring forward, I would probably put Rosa there over Alessia. So I'm not too sure which one Arsenal will go for, unless, like Laura said, they split it and you split the game time and you only have one of them playing at any one time, and you go for somebody else in the 10. They can play together though. If you're going to put any though, I would probably drop Russo a little bit deep. I wouldn't shove her all the way back into like a flat midfield 3 or anything like that, but you'd drop her just slightly behind the number 9.
I think there is a bit of an option if we need to change the sort of formation as well. I know sometimes coaches like to have a couple of options, and if we need a sort of more central, direct approach, I think having something like Pafarji and Russo behind Blackstenius could be something that's very useful. Obviously, you then need other 3 midfielders. You've probably got people like Mead and Caldente on the bench. But yeah, if there's going to be lots of rotation, that might be the way to go. So I want to get on to our sort of expectations for the season coming. Well, I've said to both of you two already what mine are. I'm keen to hear yours as well. But mine is that in the WSL this year, I think they'll finish 3rd. I think they'll be clear of 4th. I think the top 3 will be quite close. They could hit 2nd. It depends how Caldente and Kafaji, I think. It's largely on them two and how they hit the ground running. I did say if Chelsea have a slow start, but after watching them against Gotham yesterday, Gotham didn't look bad, but Chelsea just looked really good. So if they're going to have a good start, even under a new manager, Arsenal are going to struggle to hit that 2nd place. And I think 3rd is probably where they'll end up. What about you two? Where do you think Arsenal finish in the league this year?
I hate predicting Arsenal. My head says 3rd again, and it's kind of... My part of my head even says 4th, and we don't even make Champions League, and it's really disappointing. My heart says 2nd or proper challenging. I hope there's an opportunity this season, and I think there is a real opportunity because you've got Chelsea who are going to have a new manager and are going to have to adjust to that, and I think that does take time no matter the quality of the manager. I don't think at that higher level, at the competitiveness that we've seen in the WSL over the past few seasons, it's really hard to kind of hit the ground running. And I also think that their focus will be predominantly Champions League. I think that's why they got Bompasta in. That's what they've been after. They've done the WSL, and the Champions League is what they need to add now. So I do think there's an element of there's a real opportunity this season. I think City look really strong, but if they're challenging for the Champions League, they don't have an awful lot of depth. So if Arsenal can get their act together and kind of win the games that they were winning last season in terms of the other top 3, top 4 sides, top 5 sides that they were kind of doing very well against, the record against the top teams was actually very, very good from Arsenal. If they can keep that going and then make up for those mistakes, I'm very, very confident. I just don't know if we have the edge against some of those other top teams. And I felt like, particularly the City games, it didn't feel like we were winning it because we were the better team. And that worries me a little bit in terms of... So that's a very long-winded answer, trying to avoid giving you a proper answer. I'm going to say 2nd and be optimistic that Chelsea have a little wobble and we're right in there. And because I don't think anything else is acceptable, and I'll be very sad if anything else.
So you started off so well, Laura, with that, because you were on my wavelength from the start with your 4th place finish, because that's where I'm going to put Arsenal, just so
the smile on your face, Connor, when Laura said
yeah, you're going to see why when I come to my United predictions. It's mainly because I want to sneak United into that top 3. And someone's got to drop out, and I don't think it's going to be City or Chelsea. No, I think it's a really tough one to call, because there's a world, I agree with Laura, that in a world I can see Arsenal really pushing for the title and maybe just missing out or even winning it. There's a world I can see it not clicking and finishing 4th. I really do not know. It's the same with United, actually, when we come to talk about them. I really don't know what either team are going to do. I feel like we know with City and Chelsea roughly how many points they're going to get, roughly where they're going to be. United and Arsenal, I really don't know. So I'm going to put Arsenal 4th, purely because I'm going to put United above them when I come to that in a second. But I do see a world in which Arsenal really do push on. I feel like they need to. I don't think they can afford another season being so far off the top, just being happy with that 3rd place. I feel like they need a really good run in the Champions League, an FA Cup win, or at least challenging for the top. One of those 3, I feel like will be satisfactory. I feel like if Arsenal finish 3rd again, albeit that's not awful, Champions League again, and don't win anything, let's say, and don't have a really solid Champions League run, I don't think that's going to be enough.
Yeah, I think if we finish 3rd and we get to either sort of a Champions League semi-final or win the FA Cup, something like that, then I can come away from the season thinking, that's been a really good season for Arsenal. I'm happy with that. Would have been better to go further in the league, but it's pretty good. There's other really good teams in the league, so it's not like we're rubbish. We're still pretty good if we're finishing 3rd. And just achieve a bit more than last year. I think Arsenal do all right in the Champions League this year. To be honest, I don't think we'll get that far. I can see us getting to the group stage. I think the hardest team we'll get on the way is probably Atletico Madrid. There won't be pushovers. They'll be difficult, but I think Arsenal should have enough, especially at the moment where I'm probably going to jinx it now. But at the moment, there aren't that many injured players at Arsenal. Generally, they're a pretty fit squad, which is a rarity if you looked at their squad last season. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see who they draw, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them go out in the group stage. What about you two?
I can see them getting a little bit further, kind of just out of the group stage, or kind of, I think quarterfinals for me, maybe not quite out of to the semi-finals. But I also do think if we get the momentum, then we tend to do reasonably well off history. But then obviously we don't have that experience from last season, so maybe it will be another year of kind of reconsolidation and just getting into the group stages, knockout stages. Yeah, I'm predicting quarterfinals, I think, for Champions League.
I think Arsenal will get to the knockout stages of the Champions League. I don't think they're going to have... I think they would have learned from last year with the qualifiers and kind of how that went. So, yeah, I would expect Arsenal to at least get into the knockouts. I think get a pretty decent enough draw, and who knows? You saw a couple of years ago what it can do if you can... it's fine margins. You can get there if you have a slightly favourable draw. Obviously, the later you get into the competition, it doesn't really matter who you draw because they're all going to be, elite level teams by that point anyway. But yeah, I would expect Arsenal to at least get to the knockouts.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you're both more optimistic than me. I hope you're both right. Let's move on to Man United, because last season they finished 5th. They were 6 points behind Liverpool in the end, which I'd kind of forgotten about. It was a real race for 4th place. And then all of a sudden, Liverpool was 6 points ahead out of nowhere. United, as I say, 6 points behind Liverpool, but 4 points ahead of Spurs. They made their first steps, I guess, in the UWCL. Knocked out in qualification, but it was still a great moment for the club. And I've heard the other main thing about last season was Mark Skinner hit the headlines a lot. We'll come back to something about him a bit later. But Connor, how were you feeling at the end of the season when you sort of had that little look back at Man United and how they did?
It's such an interesting question. I've found this all summer when we're talking about United, because, you say the gap to Liverpool in the league, that's mainly because, whether the players would ever admit this or not, to me, it was pretty clear. I think the mindset had switched to the FA Cup by probably about February time. It was looking likely we weren't getting top 3 and we were just dropping points all over the place. And those 3 games that we had in between when we beat Chelsea in the semi-final and the final, they were probably the worst 3 performances I've ever seen. Well, to be fair, we played even worse after the final. That's another conversation. But those 3 games, you could just tell the mindset switched to the final. We weren't really fighting for anything. I think we were quite happy for Liverpool to have fourth, as long as obviously we went on and did what we did and won the FA Cup. It was a weird season. It really was a weird season, because I think in moments, you look at the second half against PSG in the first leg, we looked like a real elite Champions League side that had been there for years and really competing against them. Then we had kind of the second leg, didn't go our way, but I thought, you know what, we've actually put up a good fight here, and I thought, fair enough. Then we had a load of draws. We drew to Leicester at home in that time. We drew to Brighton. We had the late draw to Arsenal as well. We were just dropping points all over the place. And then we lost at Old Trafford to Manchester City, and it all just seemed to unravel. And right before Christmas, losing to Liverpool at home at LSV. And it was like, right, this season's kind of going down the drain a little bit. Salvaged by an FA Cup win. I would not swap that for anything. If you could say to me you'd finish third but don't win the FA Cup, would you change it? Absolutely not. That day at Wembley was well worth it to win the FA Cup. So I'm happy we got that.
Would you trade second?
Was that sorry?
You said you wouldn't trade third, but would you trade second?
No. First, yes. No, not second. I'd take the trophy any day, I think, on that one. But it's not tainted, because I think the day itself was amazing, and seeing the first major trophy and seeing the players get the send off, like Katie Zellum, for example, obviously got that moment that she wanted, obviously, with the trophy as well. But it kind of is a little bit tainted by what happened the week after. We always said we expected to lose to Chelsea on the final day. That was kind of a given. Once we'd won the FA Cup, it didn't really mean too much. Yeah, it's a little bit tainted when you look at it, losing 6-0 at home at Old Trafford in front of, all those new fans as well that were potentially coming to the game. It kind of took a bit of a shine off the FA Cup. And to be honest, I felt quite embarrassed watching us parade the FA Cup around at full time, having just been absolutely battered. I don't think we had a shot on target that whole game. Yeah, so it kind of took a little bit of a shine off it, but I think the optimism slowly come back. But it was such an up and down. It's we've won the FA Cup, amazing. To then, oh my, what have we just seen? Old Trafford.
Yeah, I think that last game against Chelsea I thought it was a bit sad watching it. Well, I mean, it was lovely because it was, for a Chelsea point of view, it was Emma Hayes' sort of signing off, winning the league, that kind of thing. But at the same time, it was for people like Mary Earps and Katie Zellum, who have obviously now left the club. That was a horrible way to go out. That was a horrible sort of end of their really good Manchester United career. So yeah, we'll move on to that sort of side of it. So let's have a look at how the squad's changed. There are, I think, 5 major players that have left Man United this year. So Mary Earps and Katie Zellum are probably the main two. Connor, do you think Earps or Zellum will end up being the bigger loss going into the next season?
Katie Zellum, because of her off-the-field activities. I think we're going to miss that big time. I think the new captaincy, is a good choice. And I think it will be, because I'm hoping at the time of recording, this is public knowledge. I'm not going to say it just in case it isn't, but I think it's a good choice. I think they've chosen well on that point of view. But I feel like what she did in terms of, you only have to look at every single player's reaction when she left. Everyone was talking about, thanks for what you did for us last season and everything else. I think she really kept that team together. So that's a little bit of a concern. Mary Earps obviously was a big presence. It's going to be interesting. We've never really had a matchday squad without Katie Zellum in it at all since United Women have been reformed. We've never ever played a WSL game since it's been reformed without Mary Earps in goal. So it's going to be a big change, from both points. But yeah, I'm concerned about that, but I feel like there's enough leaders in that team that can step up and bring the players together. But yeah, there's a lot of talk about Mary in terms of our replacement for her. We replaced her last summer, in my opinion, with Fallon Tullis-Joy, so I'm not worried about that in terms of on the pitch, but I do worry about what Katie brought off it. Yeah,
I'd give the same answer pretty much, that Katie Zellum is, for me, I think one of Manchester United's, probably actually Manchester United's most important players. So much of the creativity went through her. She was on set plays, pretty much every set play. I think a few other players took sort of dangerous free kicks and corners, but it was pretty much just her. The two of them played every minute in the WSL this season. The only other player that did that for Man United was Maya Le Tissier. So that shows just how important they are and how important glue within the team, I think, is the best way of wording it. Because I've put in sort of our notes for this, is that Mary Earps, in terms of player quality, I don't think she was actually that good last year. If you look at things like her post-shot XG, so that's how she fares against the XG that came in against her, she was a real sort of middle-of-the-pack goalkeeper. She wasn't top 3 like you'd expect her to be. So in terms of her actual goalkeeping, it shouldn't be that hard to replace her. You could get another relatively average within the WSL. Obviously, they're very good goalkeepers, but they'd do the job that Mary Earps did. But I think as a communicator on the pitch and probably in the dressing room as well, she seems like someone else as well as Ellen, who's such a big loss. I think you see, and shout out Charlie Parks on the Why Was She podcast, as mentioned before, that Mary Earps, when she plays at My Laetitia, talks to her all the time. Laetitia is obviously one of those players that loves to be spoken to, and having that person gone now might be a bit of a comfort blanket gone. Hopefully, and I think My Laetitia is more than good enough a player that she'll still be absolutely fine for Manchester United, but it'll just have to be something a little bit different. In terms of Fallon Tibbles-Joyce coming in, do you think she's the best person to place Mary Earps? Or I know there's been a lot of rumours about Lise Kopp from Leicester coming in. Would you want Kopp to join?
Fallon has to be number one. If she's not, I will riot. To put it politely, no, obviously I won't. She has to be number one. But you don't pay a record fee for a goalkeeper and then don't make her number one when your past number one moves on. I'm intrigued by the Kopp talk. I don't think it's a player that I'm thrilled if she joins United. I'm happy for her to come in and be a number two, but I would not like to see Fallon shifted out. At least Fallon's got to be given the chance. She's got to be given the chance at number one, and at the very least until like January, February, and see how she settles in. But yeah, I'm not too engrossed in that talk, to be honest. I can see why United want a goalkeeper with WSL experience, because Safmida Sumtelo, who is our current number two, has not got that experience. So I can see why they're going out there and looking for that kind of keeper. But I don't think it's an area that's necessarily pressing for us. I'm not sat here going, oh, like we need a goalkeeper desperately. I'm just like, if we get one, we get one. I'm not massively concerned either way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I think Tibbles-Joyce is the player, and I think she's more than good enough. I think versus Lise Kopp, I think she's a good WSL keeper. I don't think she's necessarily currently anyway at that level that's going to be pushing United towards Champions League, which really is where you want to be. Don't see why you wouldn't give Tibbles-Joyce the start. Some of the other players that have gone are Guerrero, who's gone to Club America. I put in the notes, in a way, she's not that much of a loss. I'm going to say that's not because she's not a good player. It's just she didn't get played for reasons that I'm not really sure. I'm sure Club America will be a good fit for her. And the big one that I thought was someone I'm surprised Man United wanted to let go was Lucia Garcia. She was one of the 7 players that featured in every league game for Man United last year. And in the FA Cup final, she got 2 goals and player of the match. Even if she does swear on TV every now and then, I thought she was a fantastic player. Though obviously not necessarily a Man United fan yourself, but you'll have watched the FA Cup final, you've seen her play in the WSL last year. How much of a loss do you think Garcia is going to be this year?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one, because I think it comes down to, like, when you look at the incomings of Terland and potential like other attacking options. But I think Garcia was quite routinely in the games that looked not so good for United, stood out. Like, she looked, when I went to see Arsenal United, she looked like the one player that could kind of do something and kind of drag them when there wasn't necessarily a lot going on, when they didn't have as good a games. So I think her consistency last season in terms of just being a kind of, she was just like an annoyance to the opposition defence, and I think you need players like that to kind of wear them down, to be that constant threat from the wing. And she just looked like a really solid player that could always offer something. So I think it could be a big miss, but I also don't think that it has to be a big miss if the players that United have signed and the players that can step up have a good season. I think it comes down to like how United perform next season and how they get the best out of the players that they've got now, in terms of whether you're looking back going, that's going to be a big loss, or actually we didn't really miss her because these players stepped up. It doesn't feel like she's a kind of Viv Miedemar that you can only get what you get from Miedemar. It feels very replaceable in that sense, but her kind of reliability, I thought, is something that you could look back on and go, we do miss that bit.
I think, like you say, whatever game you went into, you knew what she was going to give you. And another transfer out that was announced just a few days ago was Gemma Evans. She transferred to Liverpool. I think generally, I don't know if anyone else has any other opinions on this, I think generally this is a pretty good transfer for all 3 parties. I think she probably wants a bit more pitch time than she gets at Man United. I think Liverpool are getting a solid player, which will only strengthen their squads. I think Man United get to offload some wages of a player that they're not really playing that much.
I tend to agree to a point. I mean, she played a decent number of games. I think it was 18 appearances last season. Like, she had a fair few. The problem she had, and I felt sorry for him anyway, she was playing out of position for most of it. She's not a left back. She's never played that in her career, and she's she was played there in the games that our normal fullbacks would have scored. Arsenal at the Emirates, for example, up against Beth Mead and Emily Fox on that right-hand side. Coming up against Man City in the Conti Cup, she played left-back when you're coming up against Chloe Kelly on that side. And then I think they swapped halfway around, and then Hemp was running at her on that side. So she's playing out of position in a team that's a bit shaky against some of the best wingers in the league. So I did feel sorry for her. I think when we saw her in the centre back position when she played, she was all right. I don't think I agree with you. I think it's the best move for all parties. I think it's best for United because I don't think United were going to use her next season. It's best for her because I felt like she got a lot of blame last season from United fans, and she's going to be playing more in a system that I think suits her best. And I think Liverpool are getting a good player. So yeah, I think it'll work all around for everyone.
Fingers crossed. It's always nice when you get a story like that. I don't think you get many where all three parties are happy with it. Moving on to some of the players coming in, I wanted to sort of lead with the biggest signing, but I also wasn't 100% sure. I know the biggest signing is, but I don't know the biggest addition to the squad. So it'd be interesting because I think your answer is probably slightly different to mine, but I think the biggest addition to the squad this year is going to be getting Grace Clinton back. After a season last year at Spurs, she had basically any strengths that you need for a good box-to-box midfielder. She's really good with her progressive carries and her 1v1 success. She has a lot of shots. She makes a lot of tackles. An all-round good midfielder. But yeah, I think she's someone that could potentially... I'm intrigued to see what you two think as well. And we'll start with Laura and the sort of less biased opinion first. But I think she could potentially be someone that will fill that sort of Zelen void. In a slightly different way, she's obviously much more creative by dribbling rather than passing, but she can still be that creative outlet for me.
Yeah, I think it will be really interesting to see how she's used because I think the loan move was brilliant because I think Robert Villahan was absolutely the right manager to use her and bring her on. He sets his stall out for his teams by working out kind of I spoke to him essentially and I said like, Grace Clinton, how do you see that as like developing players in the future? Is that something that Spurs? And he was basically saying like Grace Clinton is our case study to show all other players that want to join that we can develop young players well. And this is a case study. We basically get her into the England squad and she's been brilliant for us in that setup. So I really felt like she was under a manager who absolutely had that in his mind, wanted her to flourish in the system and set that up around her. And I think if she can do the same, and she's already had that breakout season, so maybe she's got that confidence to take that to United and do just as well there. I think it'd be really interesting to see how she's used in that system, because I think she was potentially used a little bit more as like a 10 at Tottenham, whereas at United maybe a little bit deeper. But I think if you're talking about a Zelen replacement, and obviously you've got to allow for Toon, but I think if you can create partnerships between Toon, back on form, Clinton, Terland, that's incredible. If you can get that creativity all working, that could be absolutely phenomenal. And another kind of partnerships, you could have such a strong line from front to back between Letizia, Clinton, Toon, Terland, of like a core, a spine to a team that is super creative, super like just really exciting team to watch. So I think it will really depend. I think we've spoken about doubts in the manager, whether that can fit a system and they can be implemented in the right way and managed as players to be allowed to create those relationships, but they absolutely have the potential to do so.
Yeah. Do you want to pipe in on Grace Clinton before we move on to probably your favourite?
Yeah, I mean, literally, as we said at the time of recording this, she's literally just won PFA Young Player of the Year for last season. So I think you know that tells you how highly rated she was from non-United fans and people outside of that as well. So I think she had an excellent loan spell. There was a lot, I don't know why, there was a lot of criticism of United. Oh, why have you loaned her? She's doing so well. And it's almost like, well, that's the whole point of a loan. You want them to go off and do well so they come back a better player. And now United have got an absolutely unbelievable footballer to add into that midfield. And I mean, I know we're not just talking about all of our incomings here, but I think our window as a whole, keeping Grace Clinton, looking at the incomings we've got, everything is built nicely, and now it's all a case of just putting it all together. But you look at the ages of some of these players that are coming in: Grace Clinton, Emma Watson, May Letizia, Jade Riviere, even Ella Toon, Melvin Mallard, Terland, all these players, Simi Awujo as well, they're all under kind of 25. So it's a team that's very much building for that as I said, similar with Arsenal, building for the future as well as now. So I think it's an exceptional addition. It's definitely like a new signing coming into the midfield. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see what Mark Skinner does with her, because all of the discussion is it's her or Ella Toone. I don't think it is. I think you play both. I think you play Grace in the 8 and Toone in the 10. And one of Simi or Hayley Ladd behind her. And then you've got a really balanced midfield, in my opinion. So, yeah, I'm intrigued to see what he does with it next season, because we've got, again, it's similar to last season, we've got a lot of midfield options.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Man United's strongest midfield this year is going to be with both of them in it. I think exactly as you say, Grace Clinton in the 8, because she is that box-to-box midfielder. Ella Toone slightly further forward, because that's where she's best in that sort of 10 role, and then Hayley Ladd sitting in that 6. I think that's a brilliant midfield, and the sort of midfield that can help Man United challenge for Champions League football the following season. Now, moving on to probably the main signing for Manchester United, I think anyway, I'm sure you're both going to agree with me as well, is Elisabeth Terland from Brighton. I know I said it about Caldente earlier, but I think Elisabeth Terland is going to be another one that is going to be up there for signing of the season. She was the second top scorer in the WSL last year with 13, only obviously Bunny Shaw ahead of her. And at a club like Brighton, where they don't score loads of goals, she's scoring 13 goals. That's nuts. Connor, how excited have you been about Elisabeth Terland? Firstly, the rumours that came out about it, and then her actual signing for Man United.
No, I mean, it's a player I wanted before she even went to Brighton. That, everyone's got their kind of dream signing list, don't they, of who they would want at their club, given the opportunity. And she's been on that list of mine for a long time. So when I got the message saying this is happening, like it's coming out next week, whatever, I was just like, sorry, wait, no, don't take the mick. Like, are you being serious? Or like what? And then because there was kind of talk that maybe that could happen, but nothing concrete. And then it was just, wow, yeah. I think she was putting up, 13 goals in a team that wasn't very, I guess, cohesive last season, and a struggling Brighton team. So if that's what she can do there, and obviously what she's done prior to going there as well, when she's getting the kind of service off maybe the likes of Tooney behind her, Clinton, as we've just mentioned, whether that's Mallard or Galton or whoever it is that's putting the balls into her, she could have another. I think she'll get double digits again. I'm kind of toying between, do I think she's going to get between 15 and 20? I think she can do that. She's already hit the ground running. Our first behind closed doors friendly, she scored 2, so she's already off the mark, in terms of in a United shirt. So I don't think she's going to... This is going to sound really weird after I've just said this, but I don't think she's going to be our most important signing, because there's somebody else I think will take that mantle. But I think she's going to be one of the biggest in terms of longer term impact on the team. If she can stay fit and stay scoring, she's going to be unbelievable for us.
Yeah, I think she's a phenomenal player. I think she's exactly the sort of player that a team that's wanting to be top 3, 2, maybe even 1 in the league in the next few seasons needs to have. I think she's an absolute world beater. And to be honest, a player that I would have loved to have had at Arsenal, albeit we don't really have the space because we've got 8,000 forwards already. Connor, I'm going to let you start the next a little bit then, because I was sort of looking at my list now about sort of who to speak about next of the new signings, but it sounds like you've got someone in mind that could be your most important.
Yeah, and it might surprise people. I tweeted this not so long back, because it's not necessarily a flair player or someone that's going to score. I think Dominic Janssen is going to be our most important signing, because, again, this is somebody that was touted to be going elsewhere, the other side of Manchester. Again, a player that is seemingly chosen. He's already done an interview and spoke about, I'm happy playing out of Champions League for one season, but next season I have to be in it. So she's already put that mantle down basically to the squad, saying, we're not having Champions League this year, but next year we're getting in it. So I like that about her. The fact she's coming, her passing range is exceptional. I think if you play what I think and what I want to happen is her and Laetitia as the 2 centre backs, then you've got 2 players that can play that diagonal pass over the top. So you've got it from both sides. Then and I just think that experience and that calmness in the back line that we didn't really have last season, I think will be vital. And for someone like Laetitia to learn off even more, I think will be very, very important. So that's why I put her as most important, because I just think she can add a lot of things that we've lost kind of off the pitch and on it. Like I said, she's maybe not going to get all the goals in the world and things like that, but I definitely think the value she adds, outside of that is immense.
Yeah, I agree with that. She's obviously spent the last 5 years at Wolfsburg, but I was having a look at stats from last year, not necessarily compared to all players, but compared to other centre-backs. For a centre-back, she had one of the highest, this is, by the way, in the top 9 leagues worldwide. She had some of the highest numbers for touches, progressive passes, key passes, long passes, and goals. So basically, she's on the ball a lot. She was a key distributor for Wolfsburg. And although it wasn't in the stats, I'm assuming those goals were either long-distance shots or popping up at corners. Laura, there's obviously another signing that United have made that I think has gone not under the radar, but has been underappreciated, and that is Mallard. So she was on loan last year from Lyon, but now it has been made permanent. I know this is another one Connors was really excited to have happened. But Laura, I just want to hear your thoughts about how you thought she did last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a first season at a club, it can be hard. So I think she did very well. And I think in terms of watching her kind of settle into a club and do so well, I think I forget how young she is as a player. Like, you should expect her to be a lot older. And it feels like, I don't know, to me, it feels like she's been around for quite a while, but she obviously hasn't, she's actually quite young. So yeah, I think for United, it feels like to keep her, for me, it feels like a very much like we're going to challenge. And I think the Janssen signing also does that in terms of she feels like this is a club, having spent a year there. I think this is one of the key things about signing a player that's been on loan to you previously. It's not just you've kind of sold me the project in the meetings that I've had with you, but it's actually I've been here a year and I've enjoyed my time here. I've felt like I've developed and I've added something to this squad and I want to stay here longer. And I think that's a really positive thing to happen at a club, and especially with someone with her ceiling, because I think it's been very clear from her performances that she has a very, very high ceiling and she's only going to improve. And I think the kind of relationships that she's built last season are going to be built even stronger this season. And I think she was very important to a lot of kind of United's key games and scored in some of those and scored very important goals last season. So I think moving into this season with the kind of confidence that she brings in terms of saying, spent a year here and this is where I want to be. And this is like where I want to spend my future at such a young age for such a player with promise. I think that kind of thing is something that can give United fans and the rest of the league kind of maybe a little bit of a worry about United, because you hear probably from an outside perspective a lot of like discourse about Skinner and you hear a lot about training facilities, but actually they're signing Terland and she said she wants to stay. And I think signings like that suggest, and Janssen, in terms of what Connor was saying about a comment she's made about Champions League, it suggests that actually the project's probably a lot more hopeful than the kind of general perception is around United because of the things that's been said around Jim Ratcliffe.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think she's someone that I was looking at her numbers actually in prep for this and noticed that she didn't have a lot of volume to her numbers, but she did have a lot of quality. So things like goals per shot was really good. Her take-on success rate was good, although she didn't do many take-ons. She won a good percentage of her aerial duels, but she didn't actually win that many. So I think her wanting to stay and play more, I guess, and get more involved with the team is going to be only a positive for Man United and for Man United fans. Talking of which, Connor, I know Mallard was one of your favourite players last year. She's
just bought into everything. It's everything you want. And there's never been a lone player that I've fell in love with almost instantly. You could tell how much she just loved being at United from the off. It was, and this is someone who's won multiple Champions League, right? And she's been in a very successful Lyon team. I thought there's no way we are getting her on a when that was kind of coming to the end, we were all just thinking, watching her when we won the semi-final game, and she's running around the pitch like I'm looking at her going, to her, I can't believe how much this means to her. Like I said, she's won multiple Champions Leagues, won all these trophies, got all these accolades. Yet a semi-final win over Chelsea, she's like running up into up to the fans and everything. Like, it meant so much to us. So we were all just like, that was her and Terland for me were the two that I really wanted, obviously, this summer. And I've got my wish, which I'm quite happy about. But yeah, I think, and aside from that, she's an exceptional footballer. There's a reason Lyon, when they were looking at her a few years ago, got her down to a 5-year contract. They wanted her for the long term. And obviously, I'm glad that we've got her now. Now it's just about utilising her. And I'm really going to be looking at Mark and the coaching team to get the best out of her, because she is an elite forward that needs to be in that front three and provide. And if she's not, then I'd be looking elsewhere as to why she's not, because she's proven it that she can do it at the highest level.
Yeah, she absolutely can. And she'll be wanting to get as much pitch time as she can to prove that. And like you say, I think absolutely, I can see from the outside that she's absolutely bought into the club, and the fans love that as well. So for any club, that's the sort of player you want. There are a couple of other high-profile signings that Man United have made. There's obviously Anna Sandberg, who joins from BK Häcken. She spent the last 2 years, sort of over the course of 3 seasons at Häcken, coming second in each season. For a left-back, she got 4 goals in the last, she's made 13 starts in 2024. So 4 goals and 13 is pretty good. Forwards get those numbers, never mind a left-back. And obviously, Simia Ujo, the Canadian, she has played for USA at youth level, but 19 appearances for Canada now. I think they can both be quite useful signings as Man United go through this season. Moving on to some of the other bits off the pitch, just before we go on to the questions that have come in, I want to highlight something else that's kind of come out over the summer, but is probably not something that just will be over the summer, obviously, but is the sort of prioritisation or the lack of from what I've written as the big dogs at Manchester United. Ratcliffe's made it quite clear that the men's side is the main priority. That's where the money is. He refers to the men's team as the first team and the women's team as the women's team. Things like that, probably because it's just more commercially beneficial, and that's how he wants to go about it. The men's team have got the women's facilities this year, things like that, while theirs are getting redone. I find it quite interesting, and Connor, I wanted to ask you this, because obviously you support both the men's and the women's sides at Manchester United. Ratcliffe seems like he's doing all the right things for the men's side, but obviously isn't necessarily prioritising the women's side. There is a bit of money being, don't get me wrong, that you've got Terland in and Grace Clinton's staying and things like that. So, and seems very happy. So it's not the end of the world, but there certainly seems like there's a few priorities not quite in line. Are you happy that he's taking over, or did you sort of prefer any of the other options that were there for Manchester United? Sort of keen to hear what your thoughts are on them.
People are not going to like this, I don't think. And this is probably going to be slightly controversial. I mean, I wasn't against him coming in. I never wanted us to be state-owned. I said that at the time, and I will continue to stand by that. And obviously the other option was potentially Qatar. And I never wanted United to go down that route, so Jim Ratcliffe was the only other option. It's a really tough one. This is probably not what people are going to like, I guess, on this. I don't particularly care if he doesn't care for the women's team, as long as he puts the right people in that do. I think you can look across the WSL that clubs that are run well in terms of women's football, do their owners really get involved? They probably don't. They leave the people, they put people in place to run it properly, and they probably just sign off a check at the end of it. So with Emma Barada and Dan Ashworth and people like that, I think they do care for women's football. When you hear about what they've done, obviously, at City and Brighton and Newcastle and other clubs, they really do care for the women's team. So as long as Jim Ratcliffe, I think, stays away in the politest possible way and leaves them to it, and really, puts the women's team on a level playing field, because that's ultimately what it is. Now, what he's saying in terms of the revenue and where it comes from, he's not wrong. It is. Manchester United wouldn't fully have the commercial rights and everything else and the money coming in that it does without the men's side traditionally over all those years. However, you can't keep referring to that as the first team, because it's not. They're both the first teams. And you can't keep talking in the manner that he does, almost talking about it like an afterthought. Now, behind the scenes, if he wants to put all his effort into the men's team, as I said, that's fine, but put people in place for the women's team that are going to care about it. And I think he is doing that to a point. You see in the transfers that we've made, and I think that the people that are in place, I'm quietly hopeful. I hear a lot of better things this summer than I did last summer about how United is ran in terms of the women's team. Obviously, I know there's a lot of negative stories about United at the moment, and there's a lot that come out, and I don't disagree. I think they're right to call United out on that. I said that at the time, that, especially with the portable building situation, that if it's not that bad for the women to move out, then why can't the men just stay in those portable buildings and the women stay where they work? If it's not that bad. So I don't read too much into it. I don't see it as hugely detrimental, but I just don't think he helps himself. To me, I just kind of think he just needs to stay away from the women's team and just stop talking about them, because it's clear to me, I think, that his focus just isn't there. So leave it to people that actually do care, and their focus is the women's team.
Yeah, I think you've worded that really well as well. It's very much a viewpoint that I hadn't really thought about, because, like you say, it's not just him running the club, and it's a case of him putting his trust in other people to do it, and those other people do seem like they're doing the right things. I think from someone that's more of an outsider, probably he seems to be one of the main people that, gets in front of the camera and things like that and does interviews. And then when he says the wrong thing, that's just what I assume that the people upstairs at Man United are all thinking. I don't really separate him from the others. But yeah, like you say, the others that do the work there seem to be doing the right things, even if he doesn't really speak about it in the right way. I'm going to go on to a couple of questions that we've had in on X. So for both of these, I'd like to get both of your opinions, but I'm going to go to Connor first on both of them. So firstly, this is from Kuda. He says, with the current transfers done, the team is screaming for either a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2. What formation do you think will get the best out of the squad?
I don't like to disagree with the question, but I don't think it does. I don't think we need a 2 up top. I think it can easily be done. I think when you're looking at Mallard and Terland, obviously they're both prefer, I think, to be central, right? But then where do you put Jace? You're leaving her out of the team completely because she's not number 9 in my opinion. You don't play her down the middle, you play her off the right. I've always said that. We played her a bit down the middle last season and it just didn't work. My ideal front three would be Mallard off the left, Terland down the middle, and Jace off the right. And I would leave it as that with you kind of 2 and Clinton behind that. I think we could see a change of system potentially, certainly to a back 3, as has been mentioned, especially with a player like Janssen. You kind of go for your Janssen, Millie Turner, Laetitia, and kind of Riviera and Blundell, your wing backs, and Mallard and Terland your front 2, and you go for your 3 that you mentioned, and Jace becomes that rotation off the bench. So I can see that, but I personally wouldn't do it. I like to keep the 4 at the back and keep the 3 up top as it is. I wouldn't be deviating that too much, but that's not me saying that we won't do that because I think the options are there to do it.
Yeah. Laura, what about you? Do you think that Man United should be going for a 2 up top or keeping that 3?
I think I agree with Connor, and I also think in a season with a lot of change, it's probably better to stick with what you know, because we've kind of spoken about like Ups and Zelen both leaving, and I imagine they're very big communicators on the pitch, which is what we've spoken about. So if you're losing them and then also trying to change formation, that could... Maybe it's just like, you know what, we're changing everything, let's change it all in one go, and that's the way to go forward. We're losing some of those players. And you know what, they're all professionals and they can all communicate, so I'm probably overthinking this a little bit. But if like you're losing as a key kind of communicator at the back, Tullis Joyce might be just as good at that, so this might be a load of rubbish. I'm just trying to think of how to add to Connor because I basically agree with him. But like in terms of if you're losing that communication, using that leadership both centrally and at the back in terms of who's going to communicate to everyone, if you're then playing a new system, it's potentially not the best time to do it. That being said, when is the best time to do it? And if you've got the players that are going to fit that system best, then obviously go for it. But I do think that kind of the way they've been playing, potentially like a 4-3-3 type formation, 4-2-3-1, would very much suit the players that they've got as well. So I don't think it's massively needs to change.
Yeah, I think the communication thing you speak about is quite important as well. I know you say that they're all professionals and I'm sure they can all communicate, but people do communicate in different ways on the pitch. I know just from my experience, I've been a field hockey player, never played for England or anything, but I've played at a decent level. You do get quite a variety with some keepers that communicate, or maybe the defenders communicate or something like that. And as a centre midfielder, it makes quite a lot of difference for me having someone behind that communicates. Some people prefer to not be spoken to. Some people prefer it and they play better because of it. But having the communication that works right for the players does make a big difference, I think, even if they're professionals and, playing football at the top level. The other question that came through, I'm going to go to Connor first again on this one, because again, I feel like it might be the case that me and Laura just go, yeah, you're right. It is from War10RZ on X, and it is, what does Mark Skinner have to achieve for both the club and the fan base to accept a contract extension after the forthcoming season? Obviously, he's had his contract extended already. It wasn't really met with a lot of positivity from the fans. But yeah, what would Mark Skinner have to achieve at Man United this season for you to go?
This is the hardest question. I'll start by saying I think for some fans, I don't think he'll ever win them over. I think regardless of what he does, he could go on and win the double next season. I don't think some fans would accept him being there. For me, at the bare minimum, he has to get top 3. I think anything less than that doesn't warrant a new contract, in my opinion. With the players that are there, he has to be getting at the very least top 3. I'm not having this 4th and an FA Cup or anything else. It's got to be top 3 again. You don't sign, like I said, Mallard and Janssen and these types of players and not get Champions League again. So that's where I'm looking at from a league point of view. I don't know. As I said earlier on, I don't know what United were going to see this season. I think he last season was clearly annoyed, certainly by what was being reported about him. You could see that in his press conferences and what he was saying. He took a lot of digs at certain players, at fans, at some point during the season, at the media. He was kind of attacking anyone and everyone, and I think he felt that pressure more than ever before last season. And it's going to be the same next season. You know, he knows he's essentially on performance review. He's only got a 1-year contract with an option of a further should he have a successful season. But the start's crucial. I think if we get off to a poor start again, like we did last season, I don't think he survives the full season, to be honest. I don't think the club are going to wait and try and find out, you know, what kind of season we're going to have. So it's an interesting one. Like I said, for me, it's got to be top 3. Otherwise, I wouldn't be even entertaining the idea of a new contract.
I think you are probably bang on that there will be people out there that no matter what he does, he needs to go. But yeah, it's interesting to hear how you word your answer, I think. The actual answer you're giving it, I think third is lower than I thought you'd say. Not you specifically, but you just as a Manchester United fan. Laura, what do you think? How does Mark's going to have to do this season to get his next contract?
I think third's a good shot. I think I'd agree, because the WSL is super competitive amongst that top 4. So to kind of break the Chelsea monopoly or the City squad, which looks kind of ridiculous, albeit maybe not as deep as it could be, will be really tough. Potentially, like, I know it's not the Conti Cup anymore, the League Cup, but some kind of silverware to go alongside that, or at least be in a final. To go alongside a top 3 should be expected, especially because they don't have Champions League alongside everything else that the other 3 teams will have running concurrently. It feels like another opportunity that was spoken about with regard to both Arsenal and United last season. At the start of the season, they won't have the Champions League, so they should be able to do better in the league. And I think that's a very much a fair thing to level at United again this season. I think it's a question that's also quite interesting in regards to Jonas Eideball at Arsenal, and what does it take for him to not be sacked. And I personally think there has to be silverware that's not the League Cup at Arsenal next season, and certainly title contention, not just saying happy in third. But yeah, there's a lot of managerial how will they fare going around next season. If you then bring in like Sonia Bonpastor into that mix, I don't think her job's under threat at all, but it's another kind of how will she get on, and will she be seen as a success?
Yeah, I think first she's going to want to be successful, isn't she? And I think if she ended up coming 5th or something, I can see Chelsea just counting it in then rather than giving her another chance. But you'd expect Chelsea to be minimum top 3 and hopefully doing quite well in the Champions League as well. So I think she'll be fine. But it is interesting, I think, for a few managers, as you say. Jonas has got 2 years left on his contract, and he's not really been hitting the heights that Arsenal would expect. So what happens there? Anyway, our predictions for Man United this season. For me, I think Man United are going to finish 4th. I know Connor's not going to put theirs. He's already said we're going higher. But for me, I don't think Man United have got enough within their squad to catch the top 3. I think you've got a few top-level players, but I think the squad as a whole isn't necessarily any better than it was last year. I think Liverpool and Spurs, who are obviously the other teams in the top 6, are a bit worse than they were last year, and I think that'll play in your favour, as well as the fact that I think Man United just underperformed a little bit. So I think 4th is where Man United will finish. I don't think they'll be close to the top 3. I also don't think they'll be that close to 5th. So I think we could see a situation like we saw this season where, as you sort of referred back to earlier, Connor, that the last few games it was just to focus on the FA Cup. And I can see Man United going far in the FA Cup again, probably to the final, maybe doing well in the Conti Cup or League Cup, as we say. But yeah, I think it'll be another season of more cup success for Man United rather than league success. I'm going to start with Laura on this one and finish on Connor. Laura, where do you think Man United will finish this season?
I think based on my earlier prediction, I'm going to have to say 4th, because it doesn't make sense to do anything else, because I can't see City or Chelsea finishing outside that top 3. I kind of just echo what we've kind of said earlier, that both United and Arsenal are hard to predict in terms of how they hit the ground running, and I can see either one of them finishing outside, if I'm honest. But I support Arsenal. I can't go in so unhopeful. So yeah, I'm going to put United 4th, but I completely agree that I can see them doing well in a domestic cup competition.
Yeah, where should I put us? I think we will finish 3rd. I think we'll just sneak in to the top 4. Again, I think we've got the capability. I think the squad is not as bad as people are looking at it as. I think there's arguably maybe a winger short, but I think overall it's where I would like it to be. But then again, I look at last season, obviously there were doubts in terms of what happened. I'll put us 3rd. I think 3rd is probably about right for us.
How do you think you're doing the cups?
I want to go back to Wembley again. I really do, because it's just such a good day out. I think we'll get to the cup final. Oh, no. Screw it. No, why not? We're going to win the FA Cup again. we're going to defend it, and we're going to do the domestic double. We're going to win the Conti Cup as well, just because I don't know what. I know it's not called the Conti Cup anymore, and it's called the League Cup, but I just want us to win it. Everyone slates it and everything else, but it's a trophy I want to see United win, just because then we can say we've won it. So yeah, we're going to win that as well. Why not?
I love how you almost gave like a really, I'm going to say accurate answer, and then you just went, nah, I'm a fan. I'll just give the most biased answer I can. We're going to win both domestic cups. But no, that was really good, guys. So that is our preview for Arsenal and Man United this season. And before we go, we're going to move on to this. So yes, this is a little game that we're going to play on Decoding the WSL. It's called Know Your Stat. It is essentially a game of categories, but it's all about stats related to the WSL. So I'm going to ask the contestants to name players within a category. If they take too long or they give an incorrect answer, they will be out. It'll be 3 rounds. So it's best of 3. If you win 2 rounds, you win. If someone wins the first 2, we'll go for the third one anyway to see if we can get a clean sweep. So are you both ready? Do you both have a pen and paper? Happy days. I can see Connor's got the back of his Man United membership, which is just brilliant. Okay, so just because you are first on my screen, we're going to start with Laura for the first round. And I would like you to name for me players that have scored over 20 goals in the last 6 WSL seasons combined. So it doesn't have to be that they've scored in every season. There are players that no longer play in the WSL, for example, but all of these players have scored over 20 goals in the last 6 seasons combined. There are 25 players to pick from. And yeah, as I say, we'll start with Laura.
Right, I'll go Miedemar.
Correct. She is the top scorer on 76.
Do they have to be current? Do they have to still be playing?
No, there are players on the list.
I'm thinking retired. I'm thinking like Ellen White.
Ellen White is a correct answer. Laura?
Bunny Shaw.
Bunny Shaw is obviously a correct answer. She's had 50. Miedemar has already been said. I'll give you one live. Can't repeat the answers. That's why the pen and paper is handy, because you can write down what other people have said.
Sam Kerr.
Correct. 58 goals.
Rachel Daly.
Oh, really?
Rachel Daly is on there, 33.
Nikita Paris.
Yeah, Nikita Paris on 32.
Beth Mead.
Beth Mead is on there, 36 goals.
Rachel Williams.
Rachel Williams is not on the list. Rachel Williams has scored 13 goals over the last 6 seasons. So Laura wins round 1. I'll read you off the names that you could have had. There is Alessia Russo, Beth England, Caitlin Ford, Caroline Weir, Chloe Kelly, Ella Toone, Erin Cuthbert, Frank Kirby, Georgia Stanway, Gura Wrighton, Jordan Nobbs, Kim Little, Lauren Hemp, Lauren James, Leah Galton, Martha Thomas, Nil Harder, and Stina Blackstenius. So
Stina got on there.
Stina had 21. She's just got on the list. Same with Martha Thomas as well. So Laura takes round 1. We're going to go on to Connor starting round 2. For this one, as it's an Arsenal Man United preview, I would like you to name any of the 23 players that played at least 18 matches in the league for either Arsenal or Man United last season. Yeah, all 22. Laura?
Manny Zinsberger.
Yep, she played 18.
Millie Turner.
Just on the cusp. Millie Turner played all 22 as well.
I feel like there's less Arsenal players. Wibbenmoy.
Yep, she played 18 as well. You are
Ella Toone.
Yeah, Ella Toone is on there, all 22 matches as well.
I feel like this should be way easier. McCabe.
Yeah,
are we counting players?
21 games.
No, I feel more
comfortable. You don't have to just say players from your own team.
Yeah.
Are we saying players that are no longer
with
United still? Because
yeah, you can do. It's just players that played at least 18 matches in the league last year. Yeah, correct.
Caitlin Ford.
Yeah, she also played all 22.
Mary Earps.
Mary Earps did play every match.
Russo.
Yep, Leslie Russo played in every game.
You're saying its appearances overall. I'm going to say Nikita Paris. I don't think she started 18. I'm sure she would have featured in more than 18.
She did. She featured in 21.
Sorry, who did Laura just say a second ago?
I'll let Laura decide if she wants to tell you or not.
I said Russo. I think Lacasse got that many.
Lacasse got 19.
Blundell.
Yeah, Blundell played every match.
I'm trying to think who I even said. I'm trying to think of our injured players now, and we had so many in the middle of the season. Def Catley got that many or not? I feel like I've fallen there.
Def Catley is a correct answer.
I don't know which player is going to be safer to say here. One of the wingers, Lucia Garcia.
Yeah, she played in every match last year.
I'm going to go Palova.
Palova is the correct answer.
I feel like Rachel Williams, because she came off the bench in pretty much every WSL game, I'm sure of it.
She, I believe, had the most substitute appearances in a single season, which helped her get 21 appearances in total. Correct out?
I'm getting worried now because all the players I can think of had stints out with injury, but I'm gonna go Blackstenius as a sub.
Yeah, Blackstenius is a correct answer. She had 19 appearances. There's only 5 answers left.
How many?
Is it 18 or more? Like so 18.
18 or more. 18
I don't know whether she got 17, 18 or 19, but I'm going to say Jace. I knew it was close to the
19.
There's a couple I'm nervous about.
Nervous about that one.
I'm nervous about this one. Kim Little.
17 matches last season.
We did well there, Laura.
Correct answer.
I think we did well. We got pretty much all.
I'm happy with that, to be honest.
You did really.
Just out of interest,
I
was
thought
Leah
that was going to be harder
because that was going to be my next one. I'm assuming 17 or 18.
Yeah. So Leah Goldson had 18. Mallard also had 19. They were the only 2 Man United players you missed, and there were 2 Arsenal players you missed as well, which were Frida Marnham, who surprised me that she played 21 matches, and Beth Mead.
I was worried because I couldn't remember when she came back. But she came back quite early, so I should have got that.
So, a tiebreaker, as it's 1-1. This one, I decided to make it probably slightly harder than the other 2. You won't know the exact numbers for these, but I'd imagine that if you think of players that you think would do this stat well, then you'll get the players on this list, if that makes sense. So, I would like you to tell me any player that had over 90 progressive passes in the WSL last season. This is a proper Statterino one. So over 90 progressive passes in the WSL last season. There are 25 players to name, and we are going to start with Laura on this one.
Zelen?
Zelen had 100.
You know what? I was sat here thinking, I definitely know one. And Zelen is that one. Oh no. I'm trying to think now. What the progressive pass has got to go more than 15 yards. I'm trying to think of midfielders that must have done it. I mean, centre backs could do it as well, to be fair. But
yeah, there's a few defenders, there's a few midfielders.
Palova?
Sorry, Palova is on the list. 115.
We're going for each other's now. Even mine. I feel like it's Wubbenmoy on there.
Lotte Wubbenmoy is on the list. 134.
Oh, do you know what? I've seen you posting about it so many times as well. No, I know.
I would say this isn't just Arsenal Man United players. This is the whole league.
City player, but I don't know. This could be me out here. Alex Greenwood.
Alex Greenwood is top of the list on 176. You have been really close.
Sticking with City. Oh, I don't know. Hasegawa?
Yeah, Yuri Hasegawa, 117.
Right, who in Chelsea must do it? Let's try and think of a Chelsea player. They don't really have progressive. They have progressive carriers, not passers at Chelsea. That's a really random thing that I've picked up on. They have more carriers than passers. I think this is going to be wrong. Erin Cuthbert.
Erin Cuthbert is on 97, just about. Over to Laura.
Can't think of any more.
Is Letizia on there?
Of course it is.
Yep, she is. She's on 95. I would say you've still got 3 of the top 5 players not named.
Progressive passes. I'm trying to think of midfielders that because it's usually this is a midfielder stat list, and I'm trying to think. Ella I think plays too far forwards to get them, so I don't know whether it'd be her. I'm trying to think of more like deeper lying midfielders. So whether that's I've realised I'm just brainstorming out loud here. But
yeah, what's the time limit?
I was going to say I might have to find out at some point.
Okay, I'll go for.
Especially if I get bored.
I don't know. I'm going to have to say Ella Toon, even though I don't think it is.
Ella Toon is one of the top players, actually, on 138. Not quite in the top 5, but he is up there.
I'm going to be tapping the.
I shouldn't have hurried you up because now there's pressure back on me. Grace Clinton?
Grace Clinton is on the list. 96, just about.
There's not going to be any Liverpool players in here, surely. I'm trying to think of defenders. Actually, I've gone for Greenwood. Would Alexandri?
Yeah, Alexandri is on the list. She is 4th on the list.
That was going to be my next one. Wow. I'm going to try McCabe.
Yep, Katie McCabe is only actually 2 behind Alexandri as well, on 146. She was Arsenal's number 1 player.
I'm trying to think of United players that would have had it. I know one of our fullbacks did, and I'm Jade or Hannah. Hannah played more, so it's got to have been her. Do I stick it up? Yeah, I'll stick with the fullback then and go for Blundell. I'm going to be out of Laura. I think if you get the next one, I'm 120. I can't think of any more.
Oh, I feel like I'm screwed. There's got to be a Chelsea defender in there. Let's go with Jess Carter.
You know what? I thought she'd be higher, but 92, that is over 90, so she makes the cut.
I don't know how I did that.
There is a
So,
player on
who
91.
have we got here? So Zelen Palova. I'm just going through the list of who we've said. We've not said a Liverpool player yet, but then again, they played a lot of long ball.
I would say there's a few players on here where when
How
I
many
read
have we
them
said
out at the
from
end,
Chelsea?
you're like,
One.
yeah.
Perisic, maybe.
I'm scared because I don't know how often some of the defenders play.
Just off the basis on my little
But
list
I
that I'm
feel
drawing
like it's more
here,
obvious,
we've
isn't it?
had quite a few Arsenal, quite a few United and City. There's got to be another Chelsea. Torn between, I don't think Wrighton played enough. Charles?
Charles
I think
is a correct answer.
He seems to be on a roll of fullbacks. So,
Only beating my screen. There are still 11 correct answers left.
I was thinking of Lawrence from Chelsea, but I don't know. I don't know why I'm giving you this because I could have used this next time if I get it right. But I'm going to go Leah Valti.
Leah Valti is a correct answer on 96.
dear.
I will say you're both doing a lot better on this than I thought. I thought this was going to be a really
I think this is where I lose because I'm going to take a risk. Hobbinger from Liverpool. Or Herbinger, I should say.
Herbinger is a correct answer with 95.
I was trying to think of Liverpool midfielders.
It's not going to be my Liverpool shout. I didn't have a next one lined up now. This is tough. If she'd played a full season, then Williamson would be an absolute shoo-in. But I don't know if she played enough games or not. No, I think I'm out here. I'm going to say Lawrence, but I don't know.
Incorrect answer, unfortunately. I will say, while I'm just brushing onto my list of how many she did get, Leah Williamson is on 92. There would have been a correct answer. Just to run.
Could have stuck with her.
Ashley Lawrence had 67. Unfortunately, he just didn't really play in it. So that is a win for Connor. The players that you missed were Evelina Summonen from Spurs, Fuga Nagano, she was the one on 91. Obviously, a Liverpool player alongside Grace Fisk at 94.
Darling.
Jordan Noble,
I was thinking
Kenza Darley, Kim Little, Leah Williamson, as I've said, Risa Shimazu, who's now obviously at Man City, and the highest number that you didn't say, 117 for Steph Catlin.
I was thinking of her, but I also knew she had a lot of sub. Because I listened to a podcast the other day about how good she is at progressive carries, and it was in my head.
But yeah, Connor, congratulations. First ever winner of Know
I'm
Your
intrigued to see
Stat.
if anyone can take that title if you have future guests on.
Well, I'll do this little teaser now. Very nicely timed. But this is the first of 6 WSL previews that I'm doing. Each one will hopefully have 2 guests on them, and we'll be looking at 2 teams. So we may do some more games of this, and we'll see if anyone else can do well at it, and maybe one day come up against Connor. Might do just one-off episodes where we just play Know Your Stat.
I'll be back in the season review to fight Connor again.
That's what we like to hear. Well, thank you both. You've been brilliant guests. Thank you for being my first 2 guests on the pod. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do you 2 want to just let everyone know where they can find you on social media and some of your other channels as well?
Yeah, you can find me at Laura_HWD on Twitter, which is where I post a lot of my stuff. I've also got Threads, which is the same but with an extra underscore at the end, and the same on Instagram as Threads. But yeah, I'm doing freelance stuff now, so just follow them for whatever, but also get on All for Wofo with me and Connor, and I've also got my own podcast coming out soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Same as Laura, All for Women's Football or All for Wofo is definitely the one to plug. And if you want to hear more United stuff, then it's All for United WFC, because yes, that's where you'll find your United women stuff.
Yeah, I can absolutely vouch for those as well. We are not rivals shows in any way whatsoever. I will promote All for Wover and All for United WFC. If those sort of things are your jam, please do go and follow them, or even if they're not, go check them out anyway, because you might find that they are. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to my guests again, and I will see you next time.